So I thought I'd take a left turn from this racist bullshit that we keep hearing within the media. With he said go back to where you came from. And they leave the part out where he says, and come back and tell us where it's done. He said nothing about race. See, there's two components, I think, in anything that you can consider or deem racist. The first point and first part is to care about your own race, the value of race. And then there's a comparison to another race. So if somebody can define or tell me what the American race is, it'd be appreciated, because at this point in time, anybody that's black calls them an African American. Even though you're not African, you're just American. You were born here, live up to it, sucks to be you. Mexican American, Latin American, Asian American, you name it. They seem to think that it's okay to hyphenate American. I disagree. And I've also joked about creating my own, not LLC, non-profit, not-for-profit entity called for a Society for Non-Hyphenated America. Basically telling everyone, kind of take the billboard approach that the American Atheist did, where if you hyphenate your name, all you do is segregate. You know, use some of the language of segregation and slavery against them, demonstrating that all you're doing is setting yourself apart from everyone else, pretending that you don't belong here. You do. I don't give a shit what color your skin is. Most people don't give a shit what color your skin is. You've put this in your head. You think people give a shit what your skin is. Unfortunately for you, that isn't the case, and it won't be the case for a while. Here's why. We've actually punished people under the law for giving a shit of what you look like and what you care about. Here's another problem with people that don't follow this, especially the Marxist little crazy motherfuckers. When you start going down that road of self-identification, you are in violation of my due process rights and my civil liberties. How does that float for you? Because the law and the EEOC and the Civil Rights Act say something very specific. That specificity is what sets it apart to where you cannot discriminate, period, ever. It's illegal. It sucks to be you if you want to, but then they can slam you with a discrimination suit and sue you. If it's employment, you can get some deep shit because the EEOC follows this very specific rule. So I'm going to read you, partial, sort of, some scholarly work. I'm going to borrow from Teal there. Why not? Because this is important.
Oh, yes, in. We've got a big case here. Where have you been?
The importance of immutability in employment discrimination law. This is specific to employment discrimination, but it has importance because it derives itself from the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This article argues that recent developments in employment discrimination law require a renewal focus on the concept of immutable characteristics. In 2009, two new laws took into effect: the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act and the Americans with Disabilities Amendments Act. This article's original contribution is an evaluation of the employment discrimination statute as a corpus of law in light of these two new additions. The article thoroughly explores the meaning of the terms immutable characteristics in constitutional and employment discrimination's jurisprudence. It postulates that immutability constitutes a unifying principle for all traits now covered by the employment discrimination laws. Immutability, however, does not explain why other characteristics that are equally unalterable are excluded from the statutory scheme. Thus, the article concludes that the employment discrimination law lacks coherence. While the laws extend even to fringe religions, such as white supremacy, They disregard a variety of traits that are fundamental to the identity, including sexual orientation, parental status, and others. So, this article, which was written not too long ago, actually, if you go up to the top here, it's 2011. And they're putting forth the idea of social justice into immutability. Here's the fun part. One can change one's mind. Does that make their current opinion immutable? So what they're saying is they disregard a variety of things, and that the law extends to religion. Well, religious practice actually can change. People do go from atheist to non-theist. That is not an immutable characteristics. It does say that you can't discriminate based upon religion. I think that should be removed, to be honest. Why? People can change their religion. People have changed their religion. It is not immutable. It is not a civil liberty either. It just says that the law says that the government will not establish a religion or prohibit the free exercise thereof. It says nothing to the conclusion that you can or cannot discriminate based on religion. However, the EEOC laws do say that for some reason. So if you want to go through this, I think it's kind of interesting. There's some analysis about immutability on page 1509, if you really want to scroll through that and read it through. I would like everyone to take a really good read through this. Do you think, for example, sexual orientation can change? That is actually an immutable characteristics. I say this because after study after study after study says that you cannot pray the gay away, you cannot shock therapy the gay away, you cannot tell somebody they're no longer gay, and people that say, I'm not gay no mo. Play that clip. He's still gay. Everybody knows he's still gay. He is fooling himself to the detriment of his own mental health. Men, in particular, cannot change their sexual orientation of who they're attracted to. Women seem to be more fluid in their sexual attractiveness. That's fine. That's also an immutable characteristic. It cannot be changed. Sexual attractiveness seems to be hardwired, either at birth or development. Not sure when. No one really knows. But it is what it is. That same thing goes for trans people. Real trans people, mind you, not that crazy freaking predatory dumbass that's currently all over the news. That is faker, and they're doing it to get at little kids because they're a creepy motherfucker. Just see Blair White's video on that one. It's very fun. So, immutable characteristics. That is the key here. And I wanted to point this thing out because somebody's actually trying to interject that immutable characteristics is actually a bad way to describe it. I'll tell you why.
No matter what you might like, nothing's going to change that.
Think about it this way. If they remove the idea of immutable characteristics, that means that anything that you perceive yourself to be, self-identification, is now null and void as far as protection under the law, meaning that you can now change what you feel like on a whim and have protection under the law because it's now immutable characteristics as defined. So they can just keep adding things to it as if it was immutable or non-immutable. So if I decide to feel like a woman tomorrow, dress up as a woman, shave my face, all that fun stuff, start talking in a higher voice, something stupid like that, I now have protection under the law because the only thing they won't include in that listing is straight white male. The one reason they hate it so bad is because it does right now include straight white male because those are immutable characteristics. I cannot change my skin tone. I cannot change my race. I cannot change my ethnicity, meaning my genetic disposition to my ancestry. And I cannot change my sex. I will always have the chromosomal aptitude of being a male. Trans people also have this, which is why it causes so much mental anguish and eventually suicide for most people. The highest suicide statistic beyond depression. Having suffered through depression, and yes, it is a hell, I can tell you that if they're killing themselves more, that's pretty bad. Just saying. I thought I'd bring this to you to point out one specific thing. Immutable characteristics. The fact that we have this in the law is far enough. You cannot discriminate based on things you cannot change. But then you have people like Sean King, who says he's black, even though he's white as frickin' rice. You have other people who also claim they're black. Dolezal was her name? Rachel Dolezal? She's claiming she's now black. Why? Because she feels black. You will get, because you are claiming to be black, that it is now an immutable characteristic. Because they've called it out specifically for that thing. But they say actually just race. They don't say black. They say race. But societally, black has become a protected class because that's what it was for. That was what it's intended. There was discrimination and beatings and murders of blacks. It was a very fucked up time in our history. And it's actually not that long ago. It was before I was born, mind you. But discrimination still existed. I heard shit from my grandparents, or at least stories that my grandparents have said, that blew my fucking mind because they were talking about my wife, who's Filipino. Go figure. It was an amazing time. So, as old as I'm in my 40s, as old as my grandma, who is now dead, both of them, they were racist because they grew up in times that were extremely segregationist and racist for dumb reasons. I can't fathom the reason why, to be honest, other than straight up prejudice. But I was also grew up in Utah, so they actually have it written into their good old Book of Mormon that your skin is cursed by God, therefore you should be hated. Yeah, it's a racist religion. Of course, they tried to backpedal that and change it. Big tangent. Maybe another day. Actually, no, I've done a video on that already, so go look that up. Mormons are racist as fuck. Generally. And it's because of the Book of Mormon. Just saying. Anyways, immutable characteristics. The reason why we have it that way is because it's about things you can't change. This ideology is putting forth that feelings are better than facts. That means you can change your immutable characteristics based on subjective interpretation of self. That is not immutable. You can change your self-opinion. You can change your self-image. The way you think and describe about yourself is based upon how you feel about yourself. In other words, it can be based upon your self-esteem. It can be based upon how you feel. It can be based upon how you want to be perceived. That is not immutable. Just because you don't feel white and you want to be black doesn't change the fact that you're still white. Specifically to Sean King. Perfect example. Rachel Dolezal, another perfect example. The opposite is true. Just because you're black doesn't mean you want to go fit in and try to be white. That might be Michael Jackson at that point. There's a bunch of jokes about that. He's trying to beat the black out of him and become whiter than rice. Some shit like that. It was pretty hilarious. Regardless, you don't get to go and say you're agender or cisgender or unicorn gender and make up genders so that you can be a protected class under the law. That's the whole reason you want to do that. But you can change your feelings on that particular subject on a whim. You don't get equal protection under the law because of your feelings. That is the end of it. So, I'm going to leave it here. I'm going to put the link in the description so you can read that glorious little piece of social justice trying to justify changing the terms of immutable characteristics. But I wanted to drop one last idea to people that live in states where they have passed laws that force people Well, I guess it's not forced now, is it? They passed laws that recognize other genders that are not real. They have now a constitutional challenge to prove that those genders that are made up, that are based on feelings, that they're immutable. They have to argue that the way one feels about self never changes. Now they're getting into psychology within civil rights law. Isn't it amazing? Another reason why the DSA or the DSP, Department of Psychology, shouldn't have changed their book, the DMA-5, to say that gender dysphoria is no longer actually a mental disorder. It should be accepted. No. It's a mental disorder. It is immutable. Once you have this, you pretty much can't change yourself. You don't get to stop being trans, regardless of how trendy it was when you did it. It's stuck in your brain. It's like being gay. You can't change it. You are what you are. Those type of things that are hardwired, is the moment we identify it as such, which is the most important thing, then they become immutable. If it's hardwired, it's immutable. You can't change it, period. Sexual orientation, can't change it, period. This does, however, put a weird thing in there where you can't discriminate against pedophiles, because I currently believe that the pedophilia in itself, the sexual orientation of pedophilia, while disgusting, criminal, and repugnant, and don't touch my kids or I'll fucking beat you to death, that is immutable. They're sexually attracted to children. They can't change that. Now they can force to behave differently, like this guy. I'm not gay no more. But the fact of the matter is, they can't change that part of themselves. You're stuck that way. It is what it is. So, ponder upon that. The term immutable characteristics in United States law in particular does not allow for the made up shit that goes through one's mind when they feel like they're going to be something different. Going from bisexual to agender or some shit like that. Yeah, non-binary, even though we're binary. Anyways, enjoyed that little thought, little point out, little call out in civil rights law. I may not be a lawyer, but that doesn't stop me from noticing things and pontificating upon the meaning of words. See you next time.
But you're still not good enough.